Boatworks Today is a viewer-supported show. To learn more on how you can get involved and watch extended ad-free versions of these videos, please visit our website, boatworkstoday.com, and click on the top of the heading where it says Support This Show. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all having a great weekend, and happy Father's Day. My name is Andy with Boatworks Today, and in this video, we're getting started on the Alexseal painting demo. So, let's get started. So this past March, I was invited down to the Alexseal headquarters down in Charleston, Carolina. Our plane left at the ass crack of dawn, and, well, this lady, she wasn't quite ready for the day, but we made the trip. Now, the reason that I am so excited about talking about this paint is when I was down there, this is actually the first paint that I have ever come across that it can just be rolled, well, and you can also tip it too, but just rolling alone gives you almost spray-like finish. And unlike some of the other manufacturers out there, regardless of how you apply this paint, whether it's spraying or rolling and tipping, Alexseal can be wet sanded and buffed, making your repairs super easy, which is what makes this paint, in my opinion, the ultimate DIY paint. And just to give you an idea, this is the following day. It's the same dinghy that we were just rolling out. Now, one side of this dinghy was rolled and tipped, the other side was only rolled. It was not tipped. And walking around looking at this, you cannot tell a difference between which side was done how. It's just, it all flowed out, it tightened up, it's absolutely gorgeous. And to be honest, this actually looks better than most spray jobs that I've seen, so you're gonna really like this paint. And just to be clear, this is not any kind of a paid promo. This is strictly my opinion. I was that impressed with the paint, I want more people to know about it. So, to all the folks down there at Alexseal that invited me down, thank you so much for the experience, and I hope to see you again soon. And with that said, let's get started on our project. So before we start sanding, it is really good practice to pre-clean the surface so you don't accidentally drive any contaminants into the surface that we're going to be looking to prime here. Now for that, I'm using the Total Boat, the Dewaxer, and Surface Prep, and although these panels haven't been touched since they were coated, as you can see, somehow they still got pretty dirty. And with that initial step done, I'm going to be sanding the surface smooth using 120 grit paper. So at this point, these panels are whistle clean. I mean, there is no more touchy-touchy unless you've got your gloves on. Last thing you want to do is touch these with bare hands, get the oil from your skin on there, and you're going to get fish eyes, and it's just potential for a whole lot of problems. So going forward, I will not be touching these with bare hands until we start to get to like the sanding and that kind of part. But prior to actually laying up material, we're hands off. Now the primer that I'm going to be using for this demonstration is going to be the 442 finishing primer made by Alexseal. Now, they do make other primers, they make high build primers and that kind of thing. But as far as rolling, really the 442 is the best option. I mean, I suppose technically you could roll out their high build primer, but because it's a thicker material, it just doesn't roll out as nice. It's more so meant for like spraying, spray applications. Now, as far as the reducers, one thing I kind of want to touch on here is you see I have two different reducers out here. The 4042. That's typically the reducer that you would use if you're going to be spraying it. Now, since we're going to be doing this demonstration using rolling and tipping, I'm going to be using the R5015, and I will not be using this 4042. Now, this primer gets mixed up at a 1-to-1 ratio between the catalyst and the base, and then you can reduce it or thin it up to 25%. Now, if you're working outdoors with a breeze, I'm sure going up to that 25% would be a very good thing to do. But here inside a shop, inside a closed environment, I'm not going to reduce it that much. I'm probably going to go about half that, say somewhere between the 12 to 13%. So let me get this stuff mixed up and I'm going to be doing a little bit of an experiment here. This stuff is a pretty thin material by the time you get the base and by the time you get the primer and the converter mixed together. It's a pretty thin, almost water-like consistency. So I'm going to do one panel without adding any thinner, just a reducer, just to see how it goes. And then for the second one, then I will reduce it probably 12, 13%. So for applying this, I am going to be using, again, one of my new favorite little rollers, these little things instead of those wire cage type rollers. But specifically the roller I'm going to be using, it's made by Red Tree, and it's their 4-inch mohair mini rollers. They come in a pack of 10, and they're a great deal. I mean, like I said, I get it off of Amazon. I think I get a pack of these, a pack of 10 for like $16 or $17. So it's like $1.60, $1.70 per roller, give or take. Now the tack rags that you use, I guess when you're working with paint, they're not the general tack rags that you use if you're going to be like doing woodworking. Much different thing. Actually, it's a much different coating that they use on the surface of here. So these ones that came from Alexseal, there are other companies out there that also make their own version of tack rags for paint, but just make sure you use the right tack rag for the painting pan or for the areas that you're going to be painting. Now remember, the first panel I'm going to be rolling out without any reducer. So right now I have a total mix of 8 ounces. I want to pour half of that out. I'm not going to need all 4 ounces on one panel, but I want to know how much I actually have left because it just makes the math easy for how much reducer to add in. So I'm going to pour out 4 ounces. Now one thing to mention here, and this isn't necessarily specific for rolling out primer, it's actually applicable for both primer and paint. Rolling out this type of paint is not like rolling paint on the walls of your house, okay? This is much, much thinner, and it needs to go on in a much thinner film than what the paint you use in your house. So what I like to do is basically load up the roller and then roll out, try and empty the roller probably a good 80% or so. Try and get most of the material back out until you get a better feel for how this stuff actually rolls out on the surface that you're looking to prime. All right, so when I'm rolling this out, rather than starting right here on this edge, I like to start, at least a roller's width in, so that I can start coming down here just to be able to gauge how thick the paint is actually rolling out. Because it's a lot easier, if I get a thicker patch here, it's a lot easier to work that over to this side and over to that side and make it more even and uniform than it is if I were to roll my first patch right here and work it over this way. Whoop. Yeah, and I did not empty my roller as much as I thought I did. Told you this stuff was thin. Let me get some of this material off of here. That's better. Now, if I were going to be loading up my roller again, I've only got about 2 roller widths here. I'd probably split the difference and start it right in through here. So then I can, if needed, I can move the material over this way or over that way. But I don't think I'm going to need to load up my roller again. and it's starting to get a little thin. And I'm going to leave that one be now. I'm not going to work it anymore. Now, just by looking at it here, you can see that it didn't go out very, very evenly. So, again, this was the panel with absolutely zero reducer, which normally isn't done. But again, I just kind of want to do a little testing, a little bit of playing around, just to see, you know, how it goes. So on this next one, I'm going to be reducing this about 12 or 13%. So if I wanted to go 12, 13% on 4 ounces, 1 ounce would be 25%. So I need to do about 1/2 ounce of reducer to mix back in with this paint. And for that, I'm going to use my tiny cup. So 1/2 ounce, huh? Okay, 1/2 ounce. Now again, you have a little better angle here like this. I'm going to load up the roller, but I'm going to try and unload as much as I can, within reason. I mean, I use probably, I don't know, a few pounds of force pushing down on this as I'm rolling it out. When I'm no longer able to see a puddle being pushed down ahead of the roller, that's pretty much where I'm going to say it's good. And again, I'm going to start in about a roller's width. So, and after I've got it spread out, I mean, you do need to work kind of quick with, especially with primer. So after I've got it spread out, I'm just going to make some little smoothing rolls, using a lot less pressure on the roller itself. When you're applying it, you can use, you know, quite a fair amount of pressure. But when you come back to back roll, very, very little pressure. Not much more than the weight of the roller itself, to be honest. Now overall, both of these panels look pretty much the same, except for when you get up really close. I suspect that this one is going to require less sanding to actually get it mirror smooth than this one. Now, speaking of the sanding, that kind of brings me into the recoat times. Now, as it is right now, this primer can be, depending on the temperature that you're working in. If you're in a hot area with a breeze, you know, or anything like that, say like 80, 85 degrees with a slight breeze, you can come back and recoat this in about 3 or 4 hours without having to sand. You can just mix up another batch of primer, roll it out, and you're done. Now, in my shop here, I keep it about, well, it's nice outside right now. It's almost 70 degrees in here. I suspect that I'll probably need to wait about 5 or 6 hours before I can come back and actually recoat this. Now, if you're in a really cold area, you know, say like 60 degrees, you're probably going to be looking at it, you know, a little closer to 12 hours. Now, you have up to about 22, 24 hours that you can come back and recoat without having to sand. Once you go beyond that 24 hours, then you have to sand it before you can recoat it. So I'm going to, what time is it now? It's like 5? Well, I'm just going to have to come back in tomorrow morning and recoat it first thing, because I'm not coming back down here at midnight. So with that, I'm going to put this to bed, and I'll see you in the morning. So I did come back down last night. It wasn't midnight, but it was 10 o'clock, and so I just came down to check. The primer had actually set up to the point where it was fine to work with, so I rolled out the second coat off camera. I did it exactly the same way that I did the first coat. So this panel did not have any reducer. This one did, again, it was reduced about that 12–13%. Now, because it was kind of late last night when I did this, these panels have only had about 15 hours, give or take, to set up. I've pushed this back as far as I dare yet today to hopefully be able to try and get some paint on here. But because it's only been about 15 hours, I'm not 100% sure that the primer on here is actually ready to sand. I would say there's a 50-50 chance that it's going to gum up a little bit on the paper as I'm sanding it. And well, if that's the case, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to have to basically lick my wounds and walk away for the night and come back in and try and hit it again tomorrow morning. But if it does sand, which I'm really hoping that it does, if it does sand, then I'm going to be able to get these prepped and actually get a coat of paint on. So let me get these off of the rack, down on the table, and see what we got. Now, to help me with the sanding and just to make sure that I don't, I guess, work one area more than I need to, I'm going to apply what's called a guide coat. And essentially what that is like a skin or a thin film that you throw over the top that you're sanding that sands away fairly easy. So when that material has been sanded off, then you know the surface is smooth. If there's any low spots, the guide coat will show those low spots so that you'll know that you have to come back, work that area a little bit more. Now, for the guide coat, there's a number of different types that you can get. There are rattle can versions. The one that I actually prefer, it's made by Mirka. It's this stuff. It's I think it's like a powdered graphite. And this tin does cost more than like the rattle cans, but one of these tins will last, I don't know, 30–40 times longer than a rattle can. You'll go through, on any sizable project, you'll go through at least 2 or 3 cans, rattle cans of guide coat. This will last me almost a year. So it costs you a little bit more up front, but it lasts forever. Now, obviously, where it's darker, that's where there's more texture. For some reason, this side's much smoother. Interesting. All right, so now as you can see here, I mean, there are a few spots where I sanded through the white primer, but that's not going to be the end of the world. I mean, that's actually going to be all right because the gray primer that's underneath here is that stuff from Total Boat, the Total Protect. I think it'll work just fine. I may get a little bit of a color difference because the Total Protect was dark gray, whereas the Alexseal primer was white. And we'll wait and see. It'll kind of give us a better idea of what kind of coverage you actually get with the paint on a single coat. Now on this panel, there were a few areas where I just straight up sanded through. I mean, not on purpose, but it happened. So there are, well, right here is some bare glass. But for the most part, these areas here, even though it looks like I'm sanded through, if there's even the slightest bit of coverage from the primer, it's going to work just fine. If you're actually down to like bare glass, like I am somewhere down here and right here, I think. It may look a little bit different, but again, we'll see. You know, that's a test panel, all right? That's a test panel. This isn't a paid project. I suppose I should say that if this actually were a boat or an actual project that was important, any of these areas that were sanded through, I mean, all the way down to the glass, you'd want to come back, scuff that up with a little bit more coarse paper, again, going back to like the 120, 150 grit, Just kind of scuff up that individual area where you sanded through, and then go back over with another coat of primer. But again, since this is a test panel, I'm not going to bother doing that. But on a normal job, that's typically what you would have to do. So with that said, the next step is going to be the actual applying of the paint, which will be coming out, well, on YouTube next weekend. For those that are joining me over on Patreon, that will be coming out Monday afternoon. So this video is already 20 minutes long, so I think this is going to be a good breaking point for at least for this week. So as always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that thumbs up button. If you're not always subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you on board. Questions, comments, you can leave those down below. And as always, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.